I suppose it helps if I unmute the mic. Almost professional. Remember, always almost professional. Right, well, welcome to this very special edition of Cav HQ. This is not Cav HQ. This is actually my little workspace. And John is off helping his mother with a problem with their bathroom floor. Apparently, something's gone amiss there. So, being the dutiful son, he has rushed right in to help out. So he asked me to fill in for him for a little bit. So, not having anything prepared to work on, and, well, having discussed a number of exciting things that we could potentially be doing in Cav in the future, due to the machine, which I think is a foregone conclusion. I believe he's going to be ordering it soon. No official word yet, but I believe that's happening. And so one of the things that we discussed was something that we had discussed before, something that we've always wanted to do, and that's create the infantry at 32mm scale. And hopefully develop a skirmish game that's centered around infantry. So, yes, Cav Infantry. And so back in the early days, when we were still developing the main rule book, I was creating stuff for artwork, but was playing around with this potential of possibly doing 32mm infantry. And of course, this was back in the days when the price of metal was just skyrocketing, so that became untenable. And the mold costs were outrageous, so we soon abandoned that plan at that time. But with this new machine, well, everything that was old is new again. Strong opinions, huh, James? Well, I'm glad you're here so we could air these strong opinions. Nothing we discuss here is official. These are only discussions, and we've only just started to talk about them again, so we don't know in what form it'll show up. It's just one of our little dreams. So, to start things off, we'll show what I had previously been working on. And this is when I was developing art, like I said, for the main rulebook. I was going through a couple of different poses for the figures to then colorize and show in the book. And I started with the A&Es because, well, alphabetical, and I did the most work on them, oddly enough, because alphabetical. So we have him with his light MAR, I believe, plugged into his little backpack, so no need to grasp for power packs. So, James, you have strong opinions. Would you like to air one of these strong opinions right off the top so we can get the show rolling? No face style helmet. What does no face style mean? It means it does not look like a face, or you can't see his face, or... Okay, just has no face. You completely visored and closed, environmentally seals. No eyeballs to paint. Oh, I'm right there with you. So yeah, when it comes to powered infantry, I'm a big fan of protect everything. Obviously areas of more protection and less protection, but completely sealed so you can fight in any environment. From standard Terran to... oh my god, that's poison. Possibly vacuum landings and such. But when you get it down into the heavy armor and the light armor, there's more opportunity for no face mask. Visibility becomes more of a I guess a prerequisite for light infantry. Highly mobile, less protected, less weight. This would be powered armor that you're seeing right here. Everything covered. This was just the general pose, so you'll notice he's got very skinny legs, so I didn't bulk those up and put all the different details and wrinkles and folds and stuff you would see on Infantry. This was just me trying to figure out how I was going to make this guy look. I did 3 or 4 different where I settled on one. Change of the legs there. Not much between these two. I think I ultimately went with this more or less stance, but he was holding his gun up. Whereas here he is with that that face that you hate, James. This would look better if his gun was held up more casual like than across, covering up all that lovely detail of his helmet, torso plate. But very early in my explore. One of the things I was doing was trying to develop all the weapons. I don't like to come back and develop something to just fit in. I like to take the whole thing as a sum and work on it all at the same time, so everything ties together. One of the things I really like about modern weaponry is that you can really tell where that weapon came from. So all the various types of Kalashnikovs have that same kind of core detailing, no matter if it's their 50 cal, if it's their sniping rifle, if it's their assault rifle, carbine. They all have that same centerpiece. Same with the M16, later known as 4. H&Ks, name it, they smartly develop that central bit and for all of their line. My mic volume. Something wrong with my mic volume? Am I level too low, or am I just not speaking directly into the mic? Testing, testing, is that better? Alright, we'll go with that then. Powered armor that doesn't look like metal clothing. Yeah, that's the budget Buck Rogers television show type of armor, right? Just some sort of lamade fabric draped over a repainted motorcycle helmet. So anyway, so I started developing the weapons, went over the list of weapons that we had, and a couple that didn't quite make the list or were added mid-process, and just sort of made a style, and then built them up from there. Upper end. This is an, you'll notice by the pointed ears that this is an Adenese soldier. As James, you're going to have to expound on that. I'm not sure exactly what you're getting through. Yes, or Elmirathil, but I did create specific powered armor for the Elmirathil. So I thought I'd spend a little bit of time and look at some of the different weapons. So here's the standard assault rifle for the Adenese. And at this point, we weren't creating completely separate things for the Almirithil, so their weapons were shared essentially. Although I do plan on making specific weapons for the Almirithil. Just what I need another opportunity to make 20 more weapons. Okay, yeah, bulk. I really like when you look at modern soldiers as compared to the same soldiers even 30 or 40 years ago, how their shape really has changed as we figure out how to make equipment that redistributes its weight across the entire frame as opposed to just being hung from the shoulders like it was during World War I and World War II. They redistribute all this equipment, they're able to carry more, and the soldiers love to carry more, mostly ammo. That's one of the things that they just can't get enough of. So they come out looking really bulky, and it looks like they can't move, but they are really, really good at maneuvering in that stuff. So when you look at the modern U.S. soldier in Iraq and Afghanistan, they have a very distinct look, and it's that very utilitarian look that I like, where they look the way they look because it's followed what they need to do. So it's not just a fashion. Well, it's not a fashion statement at all. It's very utilitarian. So yeah, when I go forward and make the more of the heavy armor and the light infantry, I'm going to be adding more stuff like that will fill out their form and look like they're actually carrying things, and as opposed to just being dressed that way on base. The Hulkbuster armor is a little bit beyond the pale for us. This isn't that kind of infantry game, but who knows what the future will bring? Maybe that'd be more in the line of one of the AI-driven suits, not manned, powered armored suits. I'm not such a big fan of fantastic. I prefer more brutal. These are weapons of war. They should have a brutality about them. And they shouldn't be, generally speaking, just shapely designed things. They should they should have that function more than form. Well, Ilmirim, Ilmirn, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which I'm probably not. The idea was because that John is moving forward, presumably, to get this new casting machine in-house, where we'll be producing our own molds and producing our own plastic figures in-house, that it opens up the world for us to do more things, the ability to develop things quicker, at a much lower cost, so less risks means more experimentation can be done. And one of the things that we've always wanted to do is a 32mm scale infantry game. And of course base it in the Cav universe, because that's what we're making, so why not? So yes, infantry, Cav infantry, skirmish game at 32mm scale, but it's not official. This is all just speculative discussion at this time. These are things that we want to do. So we don't know what form it'll take. We don't know other than what the soldiers will look like, because we've already developed that. We hope so too. Infantry units with an attached big suit that takes the place of attached vehicles. Do you mean kind of like Titanfall, where they jump into the machine? If that's the right game? Is that what you're referring to, James? Dreadnought from 40K. I'm not familiar with the Dreadnought from 40K. I haven't really paid attention to 40K since probably 2nd edition. Oh, you mean as a part of the squad? Sure, yeah. Where you have the one big unit that either supports infantry or is supported by infantry. Yeah, sure. That would be really cool. Some sort of intermediate sized vessel. Yeah, that would be really cool. So here's the grenade launcher I came up with, and you can see how I kept the same general core of it congruent with the assault rifle, but it's definitely a different weapon. Box magazine. Yeah, I agree. An aesthetic for each faction so that you can really tell the difference just casually glancing down at the board, that you know what unit that is and what unit that is. Um, Rather than just using color. The more dimensions you can bring to it, the the more engaging it can be. Now, I spent a lot of time thinking about grenades when developing these things, and how are you going to use a grenade in a powered armored suit? So this is the idea I came up with. I call it the beer can, because the idea is you're not going to take a hand grenade in a powered armor suit and pull a pin or twist a knob to set a timer or whatever. You're going to want to just be able to pull it out, engage it, and throw it as quickly as possible. So I call it the beer can because you see this little tab here. That's the trigger, and what they would do is they would just grab it and they would crush it just a little bit to activate it, and then they'd throw it. So I came up with this idea of a beer can hand grenade. You can see a couple on this guy's belt there. Yeah, I'm sure if you had enough of them bundled together like an old anti-tank potato smasher, they could probably do something. But that's more in the realm of satchel charges and such. Right tool for the job. I don't think I want my powered armor troops out there improvising in the middle of combat. So here's a javelin-like anti-aircraft platform. And again, I borrowed the central piece to the other weapons to tie it in, which just really wouldn't be necessary for this thing. But I just wanted to bring in some aesthetic from the other weapons to make sure that everything was tied together as much as I could. And like I said, I was still developing this stuff for visual art, not for miniatures. So things are a lot more delicate on it than would be for an actual mini production. So that's one of the things I have to do, is go back over all of these things and figure out what I need to change to make them castable. So here's the missile. And I designed it so that it would have these pop-up fins. You got these fins that would deploy once it exited the mouth of the launcher. totally unnecessary for making miniatures. Yeah, this would be shoulder mounted. So there's the shoulder pad, and your head would go looking into the targeting screen, little targeting sensors. Yeah, this is a carried weapon. These are all infantry-based weapons. And apart from two notable exceptions, which I don't believe are in the game yet, they are all just entirely man-portable. So here's the heavy magnetic accelerated cannon, or rifle. Something a little more substantial as a secondary generator to power the thing, so no dry firing on this one. It just fires forever, or virtually forever, until this cell runs out of fuel. Well, I don't think this one would be crew served, but a second man would probably carry the pack, yeah. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, powered armor should have no problem carrying this whole setup. I mean, presumably this cabling would be plugged into a powered armored suit, and you wouldn't need the battery pack at all. That's what I thought of it anyway. If this was light infantry, then yeah, they might want a second man to carry this, what is probably a 40-pound battery or generator. But again, same core detail right in there. Same general shape, but detailed differently for the specific weapon. And that was where there was another idea that I brought into this, is this could be fired simply, more simply with just cartridges. So I decided that it would be cheaper to develop a plug that was a cartridge that was connected to a heavier pack for prolonged fire. So there's the cartridge right there, sticking out the bottom. This is the laser bolt rifle, and there is an aesthetic issue with this one. John's not fond of parts that go kind of flowing off in odd directions. And one of the problems with developing a bunch of weapons for a bunch of different factions is differentiating them and just coming up with new visual concepts to make them distinct. And I figured since this one wouldn't be brought up to the shoulder, this is carried by powered armor, and they've got their own targeting systems projected in their visors, that they wouldn't be necessarily bring this up to the shoulder. So you got the odd hand on the handle, then the on hand on the trigger, and then this would flow up in the natural direction of the arm, and that was my thought. Yeah, most of them would. I would guess that it would be less prominent into the light infantry, and maybe even the heavy infantry, depending on how they're outfitted. But in general, yeah. But it's a nice little doodad to add to a figure for painters to paint. So it is what it is. And you'd still want optics mounted on the weapon, because there's a big difference between you looking downfield and the weapon looking downfield. So there would be something mounted on it somewhere. That would be a sensor suite, maybe? An optic. So it's not necessary to actually look down the optic yourself, but why not make it so it can be used in both manners? But again, this one has a big giant power pack that is mounted on this interface brace here. And I designed it so it could be either inserted left-handed or right-handed. That's the kind of anal detail that I think about when I'm working on these things, is how they're going to be used. That comes from my college days at the Art Center, College of Design. How is it going to be used? So here's the light mortar. See the little missile tip in there? And one of the things that I don't think was made is either not terribly clear or just something that's generally ignored. These aren't mortars as in the standard mortar that is a charge that detonates, sends the projectile flying. This is actually a guided missile. The weapons would be different for light and powered armored infantry. Yeah, you don't want to have to develop the same weapon twice. So where you can, you probably want them to be used by either, but they're specific weapons that probably would not be carried by light infantry. They're just too large. But just like how the MAR I had power cables going up into a cartridge, light infantry could potentially carry it and just use cartridges, or plug in the pack for a fire support team, or just plugged into the powered plant of the powered armor for powered armored use. Right, plug into their suits. So this is a light mortar, light Adenese mortar, and I tried to design these so that there's some logic to them. Here's its projectile. And I designed these so that they would collapse, so you could conceivably see how they would be made portable. So here is it stowed, so it could be carried off from battle site to battle site, or firing position to firing position. I think the different faction aesthetics could be expressed in things like weapon distribution. One faction has different weapons for different infantry types, and other tries to share everything. If you mean that the heavy infantry would have a different assault rifle than the light infantry, I'm not sure that tracks from a logical development position. I would see that the heavy infantry would be more liable to have the heavy machine gun over an assault rifle. That's really more a JOR thing than a weapons design thing. But it could be expressed in weapons mounting. If these weren't simply handheld weapons, how they mount would certainly differentiate. I'm not sure we're going to do that. I think we prefer them to be hand carried or hand utilized, so grips and all. Well, factions aren't based on the equipment they use. They're based on their ideologies and their tactics. But nobody's going to waste money and resources if they don't have to, unless they're corrupt. Which I suppose is entirely possible. Not true? How so? Yes, governments waste money all the time, and we are one of the leaders in the wasting of money, yet you still only see um, a very small number of tank chassis, for instance, where we use the same chassis for the engineer vehicles we do for our marine battle tank, as we do for our recovery vehicle, for our mine clearing vehicles, for our bridge layers. They're all the same chassis. So yes, we're incredibly wasteful, but we still build our equipment to be more efficient. Yeah, the same rules apply in space as they do on Earth. I mean, everything is in space. Just because you're out there doesn't mean the rules are going to change. The Rock need to think different to their, or they're just humans. Well, I would disagree with that. The same rules of survival still apply, but their thinking differently is in their approach, more or less, than their outcome. The Rock might be more brutal in their approach, so they're less likely to put in items of comfort in a vehicle, for instance. But that doesn't mean that they're going to develop a completely separate vehicle for that unit to use when this chassis works just fine for both of them. Right, they can't see the inside, but they're looking on the outside, and those chassis are going to be similar. Otherwise, you're going to have a different chassis for each variant, and that makes very little sense, and it's also impractical from a developer's point of view. As long as the Rock tank looks substantially different than the Terran tank, I think we're golden there. So to the player, the Rock vehicle and the human vehicle seem the same. Well, who's saying that it's human logic? It's just logic. It doesn't have to be human logic. Yes, but how do aliens think? They still have to be based in their culture, and the idea of not wasting isn't just going to be a human maxim. It's going to be a natural consequence of any development. Well, this really probably is a discussion that's going to have to happen over voice, because I don't think text is going to get to any sort of conclusion with it. Alright, so here's the light MAR without, obviously, just with the regular cartridge. And here's the light machine gun. Again, same sort of design aesthetic. You got the same core, and shared these same kind of angles going towards the buttstock, but of course this one's got bullets. I always like the look of the M249. It's a very interesting looking piece of machinery. And the minigun. This one was a lot of fun to design. Again, John doesn't like when things stick up at odd angles, but I thought this would be good to support from the elbow down to the trigger. Huge ammo can that hopefully visually you can see it would plug into, and I built these little handles on the bottom so they could either be carried or they would act as the support when the can was on the ground, so you just sort of drop the weapon down on top of it to lock it in place and then rock and roll. Yeah, if this is inside connected to an actual figure, that handle would be nothing but a plate on the top of it. The rest of it would not be there at all. And of course, the other handhold, having it go length down the barrel probably doesn't make much sense. It would probably stick more out towards the side or at an angle, but I just sort of kept it a line. Fire it across the body, I suppose. But I thought it looked good. No, that's not a carry handle, that's for the other handle to hold on to the weapon to control it. If that was the carry handle, all this weight would just... that would not be balanced. I don't see light armor or heavy armor carrying an item like this. I mean, that barrel full of ammunition would just be... that would be too much. You know, great autosave. Lovely. There we go. Good, it didn't crash. Huzzah. Let's see, what else do we have here? Here's the heavy mortar. Or the medium mortar, I think. Yeah, this is the medium mortar. Again, the same kind of system so that it'll collapse. Lay down on the ground and carry it with these 4 handles. Part of a fire team. And here it is collapsed. Which munitions? Yeah. The mortars are actually guided missiles, so yeah, their munitions are smart. Or, well, in game terms, they aren't smart. It's not a rocket. They have targeting capacity, so you can get them laser guided in game terms. Why not move the ammo to the model? Yeah, absolutely. In some cases, yes, absolutely. Why not? I just didn't for this design. And other factions would probably be carrying that, or it would be a different variation depending on the model. It wouldn't be practical, I think, on heavy armored and light infantry, but on powered armor, moving that to the suit itself, sure. Or that ammo. I don't know, we haven't really talked about the rules system. What kind of rule system we would use. I would imagine there would be more to it because it is focused on... It's not just going to be Cav using the infantry rules that Cav Strike Ops uses. There would have to be more to it, otherwise there's no point in playing the infantry. Just an infantry game, it would just be boring. So there has to be more to it, but in the same type of system where you have the damage tracks and such. I think we talked that the damage tracks essentially would represent, each track would represent an actual infantryman, was one idea. But we might go with a different type of system that lends itself more to that kind of minutia. Well, but again, this is all just discussion right now, so we don't have... Those decisions haven't been made. How many models? It would be under the same rules as squad construction. So the what is it? The Malvernus, they would have their 10 model squads. How many models in a game? Again, that's something that we haven't touched on the rules, so we don't really we haven't really decided on how large the combat is going to be. It's not going to be battlefield wide. It's going to be more skirmish. So probably company on company sized at most. I mean, we could certainly talk about what you would like to see in an infantry skirmish games. That's always useful information to have. So if you have any ideas of how large a game you think it should be, just let me know. Yes, smaller numbers are easier to paint. $10 or less, that would pretty much fall into the construction lines because I think they cap out at 10 with the Malvernus and the Terrans. Can the Terrans also build 10-man squads? Oh, 10 units per side, depending on how they're organized, sure. Smaller battlefields, of course, you're dealing with 32mm terrain, so your battlefields would have to be smaller. Otherwise, your garages would have to be much, much larger. So here's an item that is not in the game. Is not man-carried, as you can see. This would be the heavy mortar. This is kind of how I envisioned a mechanized mortar of the future. At least for the Aidenese. Looks like I got some parts that are inside out. I'll have to fix that someday. And again, I designed it so that it could collapse. So here it is in its stowed position, ready to be hooked up to whatever tows them off to the next site. Yeah, but then you have to add power to it, and if you're towing the item, what's the point of adding power to it? But again, this item hasn't even been approved yet. This is just my little own design speculation. It doesn't matter how they think. It's if they don't have well, again, that's part of the larger discussion. Here's the Panzerfaust. Just an anti-armor warhead. This one, of course, is a pretty large departure from the rest of the design aesthetics. I really couldn't figure out how to use the same core item of the rest of the weapons, so I just sort of used the handle off of the minigun. I really wanted it to be a lot simpler looking item. Just a rocket-propelled warhead and a tube what launches it. And here's an SMG. Which, of course, has the same core as the assault rifle and all those. Just a lot shorter. Back to the minigun. And I took this basic frame idea where the ammo bin would be a completely separate part and would just plug in, like any magazine would. And extrapolated a heavy version of it, where the ammo can would sit next to it, and you can see how it would normally plug into a minigun, and you can see the frame, but it's been reconfigured for a heavier caliber, and of course with blast shields and tripod and all that fun stuff. So even the little guys can get out there and fire big bullets. That's pretty much all I've developed for the A&Es. I believe that's all of the general weapons systems. If I bring up the Terran minigun, you see how very different I made the Terran weapons look. And of course, this is the Mac version of the minigun. I'm not sure I have developed a regular minigun for the Terrans yet. Yeah, it's just the light machine gun, which is still being developed, but different core to it. And this core I'm carrying forward to through all the general Terran infantry weapons. So you'll see the this is the I think this is an anti-tank weapon like the Panzerfaust, but just for the Terrans. There's the assault rifle. So again, same core, a different using different shapes for it than I did for the Aidenese. There's the laser bolt rifle. And this shape here back in the buttstock, that would be the power charge pack, which will be clipped into there. And the Terran grenade launcher. I really like the rotary grenade launchers. It reminds me of that can't remember the name of the movie, the splat guns from this old movie with oh, can't even remember his name. Kids playing gangsters. They had these Tommy guns that shot what looked like dough. Bread dough. Funny movie. There's the heavy magnetic accelerated cannon. Again, you can see these are in their very primitive state. I haven't gotten back to these ones in quite a while. And here's a Ritterlich assault rifle. There. And very different design element for the base of the weapon. Again, the same core, just different ends to it for the light machine gun. There's their minigun. And again, this is one of those things that John doesn't like. He doesn't like it when things go off in odd directions, so I could easily fix this one just by straightening it out. And this is one that, see, I have the rotating cylinder in the middle. That'd be the firing chamber that rotates, but only one single barrel, as opposed to most miniguns would just have the entire barrels, assembly of barrels spins. their grenade launcher. Let's just hit one more, and I think I'm a little bit over time. Laser rifle. This one's a little more, a little more far sci-fi, but I was just sort of taken by it. Kind of reminds me of Fallout a little bit. Anyway, so if you have any questions that I can handle here at the end here, go ahead and type them in. If not, this has been talking about infantry, and hopefully what will be a cool addition to the Cav universe in the future. Oh, thank you, James. Sometimes they come together nicely. The Ritter was definitely one that came together nicely once I designed this core element. And the Aidenese were also that way, but some of them not so much. The Terrans, it didn't feel quite so much, so as you can see, I'm still working on it. A standalone infantry game, I would imagine so. It would... it might use the same type of rules structure, games, the framework with the damage tracks and all, but it would be a different game system because Cav Strike Ops is not meant to get down into the minutia of infantry skirmish. So in order to make that really worth 32 millimeters, you really have to have a new game set of rules on top of it. Again, this is all just discussion and speculation because the decisions have not been made yet. So I hope that answers your question there, Gimli. All right, well, thank you for joining me. We hope to have many more exciting things to talk about in the coming days. And, of course, feel free to pester John about all of the things that have been shown. And because getting that interest and basically lighting those fires is what propels us to actually prioritize things sometimes. And moving that new production in-house allows us the flexibility to develop things quicker and cheaper and get them out to the public and see if they'll fly. Anyway, thank you very much, and you guys have a good evening.